Dad threw me out at 13 because stepmom hated me. Now he wants me back. So all this started back in 2020, right when the lockdowns hit. I was 13 at the time, living in Houston, and things were pretty okay between me and my stepmom, Laura. Honestly, I saw her as a second mom. She had been around for a while and we always got along. She was nice to me, and I liked being around her. I never felt like she treated me differently from how she would have treated her own kid, so when she found out she was pregnant, I was excited for her. At the time, my real mom, Rachel, who's a surgeon, was working like crazy because of the pandemic. Since her schedule was nuts, I ended up staying with my dad, David, and Laura during the lockdown. It was supposed to be a temporary thing, but with everything happening, it turned into a much longer stay than anyone expected. In the beginning, everything seemed normal. We were all just trying to get through lockdown life, watching movies, hanging out, that sort of thing. I figured it would be nice spending more time with them, especially since Laura was pregnant and all. I thought I'd be a big part of this new chapter, helping out with the baby and being an awesome big sister. But yeah, that's not how things went. When Laura was around 4 months pregnant, stuff started to shift. At first, it was little things. She'd snap at me over something small and I'd think, okay, maybe she's just having a rough day. I mean, she was pregnant, stuck at home, and dealing with lockdown stress. I tried to brush it off because it wasn't a big deal, right? But it didn't stop. Actually, it got worse. A lot worse. Out of nowhere, it seemed like everything I did was annoying her. And I'm not even a messy kid. I'm pretty neat. I followed the house rules, helped with chores, and did what I was supposed to. But nothing I did was good enough for her. She'd walk into a room, see me sitting there, and just sigh loudly like my presence was ruining her day. It was like she couldn't stand to be around me anymore, and I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. I started spending most of my time in my room. I didn't want to make things worse, so I just stayed out of the way. I'd come out to do chores or grab food, but other than that, I tried to be invisible. Even then, she'd still get mad. One time, she came into my room absolutely furious, yelling about how my room smelled so bad it was making her sick. I looked around and couldn't see what she was talking about. The only thing in there was a half-eaten bag of chips on my desk. That's it. Before I could even say anything, she started crying, full-on sobbing, like I had done something terrible. My dad rushed in to comfort her as always, telling her it was okay and trying to calm her down. I just stood there, completely confused, like, what just happened? They blamed it on her pregnancy, saying the hormones were making her extra sensitive. But to me, it didn't feel like hormones. It felt like she genuinely hated me, and no one wanted to admit it. It wasn't just that one day either. Everything I did seemed to set her off. I'd sit quietly reading or watching something on my phone, and she'd walk in, get mad that I wasn't helping around the house, even though I'd already done my chores for the day. Or I'd be in the kitchen getting a snack, and she'd come in, huffing about how I wasn't cleaning up fast enough, even if I was literally in the middle of washing a dish. The worst part? My dad didn't defend me, not even once. Every time she'd get upset, he'd just stand there trying to calm her down, telling me to be more understanding or that she's going through a lot with the pregnancy. But he never asked how I was feeling. It was like I didn't even matter. I was just there, in the way. I started feeling like a total outsider in my own home. I couldn't be in the same room with them without feeling like I was walking on eggshells. I'd try to talk to my dad about it, ask him why Laura was treating me like this, but he always brushed it off. He'd say stuff like, she's just stressed, or she doesn't mean it, she's just having a hard time. But after a while, it didn't feel like she didn't mean it. It felt like she did. It got to the point where I didn't want to leave my room at all. My mental health tanked. I started feeling like I was a problem, like I wasn't wanted there. I'd lie in bed at night, worrying that my dad was just going to tell me to leave. The anxiety was so bad that my hair actually started falling out. I remember pulling out handfuls of it, just sitting there in shock, wondering how things had gotten so messed up so fast. I tried to make things better, I really did. I started doing more chores, trying to stay as helpful and out of the way as possible. I'd clean the kitchen, do the laundry, all of it. But no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. Laura would still find something to complain about. One day, it'd be the way I folded the towels. The next, it'd be that I left a cup in the sink for too long. There was always something. And it wasn't just the tasks, it was the tension in the house. The air felt thick, like everything was about to explode at any second. I couldn't relax, couldn't just be a normal kid in my own home. I dreaded every moment that I had to leave my room. Even when I tried to tune it all out with headphones, it didn't help. The stress was suffocating. I tried to act like it wasn't affecting me, but deep down, I knew I was breaking. I just wanted to go back to my mom's house, but with the pandemic and her crazy work hours, I was stuck. Every day felt like walking on a tightrope, not knowing when Laura was going to snap again, or when my dad was going to finally tell me I wasn't welcome anymore. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like maybe Laura didn't want me there at all. That idea stuck with me, and it scared me because at 13, where was I supposed to go if things got worse? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. Things were only going downhill from here. Then, in a normal day, or as normal as things could get in that house, I was sitting in the kitchen, scrolling through my phone, just trying to pass the time. I remember it so clearly because I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. I wasn't making a mess or being loud or anything. I was just sitting there, waiting for my cereal to get soggy. I like it that way. Weird, I know, but that's just how I've always eaten it. Anyway, I was minding my own business when Laura walked in. At first, she didn't say anything. She just stood there, looking around like she was on a mission to find something wrong. The kitchen was spotless. I mean, I'd cleaned it that morning. Dishes were done, counters wiped down, everything was in its place. But still, she huffed like she couldn't believe what she was seeing, like somehow I was the source of all her problems just for existing in that space. Then she started cleaning, like aggressively, clattering dishes in the sink, wiping the counters so hard it sounded like she was scrubbing concrete. The whole time she's doing this, she's muttering under her breath about how some people don't know how to clean up after themselves, and how the kitchen was always a disaster. And I'm just sitting there staring at my cereal, trying not to react, because I know if I say anything, it's going to blow up. But then she did something that completely set me off. She walked over, grabbed my bowl of cereal that I hadn't even touched yet, and threw it straight into the trash. No hesitation, just dumped it. It wasn't like there was some huge mess or anything. I hadn't even spilled a drop of milk. It was like she was making a point to show that whatever I was doing didn't matter. I couldn't believe it. Who just throws away someone's food like that? I snapped. All the frustration and stress I'd been holding in for months just came out. I slammed my hands on the table and yelled, "What is your problem with me?" She turned around, eyes wide like she didn't expect me to fight back. "Why do you hate me so much? I haven't done anything to you, and all you do is treat me like I'm trash." She didn't respond at first, just stood there, stunned, like no one had ever called her out before. And then, like clockwork, she started crying, full-on tears, sobbing, acting like I had just said the worst thing imaginable. Before I could say anything else, David, my dad, comes rushing in from the living room, like he always does when Laura starts crying. "What's going on?" he asked. But it was one of those questions where he wasn't actually looking for an answer. He was already taking her side before I could even open my mouth. She started talking through her tears, saying that I was stressing her out, that I was making her feel uncomfortable in her own home, and that she couldn't take it anymore. I looked at my dad, waiting for him to at least ask for my side, but he didn't. Instead, he turned to me and said, "What did you do?" Like it was automatically my fault. Like I had done something so horrible that it was causing her to cry like that. I couldn't believe it. I just stared at him, speechless. Then Laura dropped the bombshell. "I don't want her around my baby," she said, still crying. "I can't handle this stress. It's not good for me. And it's definitely not good for the baby. She needs to leave." That's when my dad walked me to my room, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. He closed the door behind us and looked at me like he was about to say something important, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest because I knew, deep down, that whatever he said next was going to change everything between us. "You must be doing something to Laura," he said. "No one hates a kid for no reason. You need to stop stressing her out, or you're going to have to leave. I can't have her this upset while she's pregnant. It's not good for her, and it's not good for the baby." I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. I couldn't even process what he was saying. Laura wanted me out of the house. And instead of standing up for me, instead of even trying to figure out what was going on, my dad just sided with her. It was like I didn't matter at all. Like I was just some problem that needed to be solved. I stood there staring at him, not knowing what to say. A million thoughts were running through my head, but none of them made sense. All I could feel was this crushing weight in my chest, like I was suffocating. I didn't know what to do, so I just nodded, grabbed a bag, and started packing some clothes. I didn't want to be there anymore anyway. Not after everything that had happened. I went back to my room, locked the door, and posted on social media asking if anyone had a place for me to stay. I explained the situation in detail, not holding anything back. I didn't care if people thought I was being dramatic or whatever. I just needed to get out. My phone started blowing up almost immediately, but I ignored it. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed some clothes in, and climbed out the window. It wasn't hard. My room was on the ground floor, and it's not like I hadn't done it before. I just wanted to be anywhere but there. I didn't even know where I was going at first, but I figured I could crash at a friend's place for a while. I couldn't stand being in that house another second, not after what my dad had said. I walked for about 30 minutes before I even thought to turn my phone back on. Messages flooded in. My dad, Laura, people commenting on my post. I didn't read any of them. I just turned it off again and kept walking. I ended up at my friend's house, and her parents let me stay the night. I didn't tell them everything, just that things were rough at home and I needed a place to crash. They didn't ask questions, which I was grateful for. I texted my mom from my friend's phone to let her know what happened. She couldn't call me right away. She was in surgery, but she said she'd send my aunt to pick me up the next day. That was good enough for me. I just needed a break from all of it. By the time I finally crashed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what my dad had said. No one hates a kid for no reason. That sentence kept replaying in my head over and over. And the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could he think that? How could he just assume that I was the problem, that I was doing something to deserve this? I'd done everything I could to stay out of Laura's way, to help out around the house, to make things easier for everyone. And this was how they treated me? I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to that house. Not after what they said. The morning after I left, I woke up at my friend's house feeling a little bit numb. Everything that happened the night before was still swirling around in my head, but it was almost like it hadn't really hit me yet. Like, I knew I wasn't going back to my dad's house, but it hadn't fully sunk in that this might be permanent. My friend's parents were super nice, didn't ask any awkward questions. They just gave me breakfast and let me chill in their living room. I didn't want to talk about what had happened. I was still trying to process everything. I didn't even know how I felt about it yet. Mostly just tired, like emotionally drained, you know? Around midday, my Aunt Maggie showed up. She gave me that concerned look you get when people know something's wrong but don't want to make it worse by asking too many questions. We didn't say much to each other at first. She just helped me grab my stuff from my friend's place and drove me back to her house. I was relieved, honestly. I always felt safe at Maggie's. She's that cool aunt who always gets it, never judges, and knows when you just need space. As we pulled up to her house, I finally turned my phone back on. Big mistake. My phone blew up with texts and calls, mostly from my dad. He must have tried calling me at least 20 times the night before. There were messages too, some from him, some from Laura, but also a few from people in the family, probably after my dad's post about me running away. I didn't bother reading all of them at first, just too much. I needed a break from all that, but I did text my mom to let her know I was okay, even though she already knew since she and Maggie had talked. I didn't want her worrying more than she already was with all the work stress. She texted me back right away, saying she was glad I was safe and that we'd talk when she could catch a break from the hospital. I knew my dad must have been losing it after realizing I wasn't at the house, especially when I didn't respond to his calls. But honestly, I didn't care. He's the one who basically told me I wasn't wanted there. What did he expect? I didn't feel like dealing with his excuses or hearing him try to make it sound like it was my fault. Not after what he'd said to me the night before. But as I sat there, I couldn't help but think about the bigger fallout. I knew my grandparents, my dad's parents, weren't going to take this lightly. They were always super protective of me, especially since I didn't live with my dad full time. They'd probably tear into him for what happened. I couldn't even imagine what they'd say once they found out the whole story. Curiosity got the better of me, and I finally started reading some of the messages. First, there was a long one from my dad that basically said he was sorry for how things went down. But he kept defending Laura, saying she was just stressed from the pregnancy and that I needed to be more understanding. The whole message felt like he was trying to justify what had happened, like somehow it was my responsibility to fix things by coming back and keeping the peace. Then there was Laura's message, which was even shorter but more irritating. She didn't apologize or acknowledge how she treated me at all. She just said she hoped I was safe, and that I should think about the stress I'd put on the family by leaving the way I did. That one really ticked me off. Like she had the nerve to act like I was the one who'd caused the stress. It wasn't long after that when the family texts started coming in. My grandparents were furious. They didn't even bother texting me. They went straight to calling my dad out on social media, asking how he could let things get so bad that I felt like I had to run away. My dad hadn't expected that. His post about me being missing was obviously meant to make people feel bad for him, but it completely backfired. Everyone turned on him. People were asking why his own daughter would feel the need to leave, questioning what was going on in that house. I could tell from the tone of his later messages that he was panicking. He didn't know what to say to everyone. My grandparents were especially mad because he didn't tell them the full story. They didn't know about Laura wanting me gone or what my dad had said to me. They just thought I'd disappeared. So when they found out what actually went down, it got real ugly. David and Laura ended up going door to door to family friends' houses, asking if anyone had seen me. It was almost embarrassing how desperate they sounded in some of the texts, like they were trying to play the victims, now that they had a whole bunch of people questioning them. But I knew better. They weren't upset because I left. They were upset because everyone else knew about it now. The guilt trip didn't work on me. The more I read through their messages, the more I realized I wasn't just mad. I was done. There was no going back. I couldn't unhear the things my dad had said, and Laura clearly didn't want me around. I'd been trying so hard to make things better, to help out and keep the peace, but it was obvious that nothing I did was ever going to be good enough. They didn't want me there, and I wasn't about to beg for their approval anymore. My aunt could tell I was in a bad place that day, but she didn't push me to talk about it. She just let me have space, which was exactly what I needed. Later that evening, she did come into my room and ask if I wanted to stay with her for a while. I didn't even hesitate. Of course I did. Going back to my dad's house was out of the question, and I didn't want to bounce around between friends' houses. Staying with Maggie felt safe. It was my escape from the craziness. The rest of that day was a blur. I spent most of it on my phone, reading all the comments under my dad's post, seeing how people were reacting. There were a few people trying to defend him, saying maybe I was just a difficult teenager, or that the pandemic was making things harder for everyone. But most people were on my side, asking why a 13-year-old would feel like she needed to leave in the first place. Even distant relatives were chiming in, saying how disappointed they were in my dad for letting things get this bad. As much as I appreciated the support, part of me was still hurting. No matter how many people called him out, it didn't change the fact that my own dad had chosen Laura over me. He'd made it clear where his priorities were, and I wasn't one of them. I tried not to think about it too much, but it stuck with me, and every time I checked my phone, the hurt just came back stronger. That night, before I went to bed, I finally texted my dad back. It wasn't a long message, just something to let him know I was safe and that I wouldn't be coming back. I told him I'd be staying with Maggie for a while and that I didn't want to talk to him until I was ready. His response came almost instantly, but I didn't bother reading it. I'd had enough for one day. As I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized that things were never going to be the same. Not with my dad, not with Laura. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. After a few days at my Aunt Maggie's house, things started to feel a little more normal, or at least as normal as they could be after everything that had happened. I was still getting constant texts from my dad, but I wasn't really reading them. I knew what he wanted to say, and honestly, I wasn't ready to hear it. He kept sending messages like, "We need to talk," or "Let's work this out." But he never actually apologized for what he said to me that night. It was all about Laura and how I needed to understand her situation and be more patient. It felt like he was still choosing her over me, even after I had made it clear I wasn't coming back. At some point, I decided to block both him and Laura on my phone. I was tired of the guilt trips and tired of feeling like I was the one who had done something wrong. It wasn't my responsibility to fix the situation, and I wasn't going to let them keep dragging me into their mess. My Aunt Maggie was a lifesaver during all of this. She didn't push me to talk about what had happened unless I wanted to. She just made sure I had a safe space to breathe and figure things out. She even set up her guest room for me like it was my own space, with my favorite blankets and snacks, so I felt comfortable. It was nice having someone who genuinely cared about how I was feeling without any hidden agenda. One day, while we were sitting at the kitchen table, Maggie finally asked me, "Do you think you'll ever talk to your dad again?" She wasn't being pushy. It was more like she was giving me a chance to talk about how I was really feeling. I didn't answer right away because honestly, I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to believe that my dad could fix things, that he could somehow make it right. But the other part of me, the part that had heard him say those horrible things, didn't think it was possible. How do you move past something like that? "I don't know," I finally said. "I want to talk to him, but I don't think I can forgive him. Not after what he said." Maggie nodded. "That's fair. You don't have to decide anything right now. Take your time." That's what I needed to hear. I didn't need a solution right away. I just needed space to figure it out. Meanwhile, my grandparents were still furious with my dad. I didn't even have to say anything to them about what happened. They had already put the pieces together from my dad's social media posts and some conversations with other family members. They had stopped talking to him altogether, which honestly surprised me. I figured they'd be mad, but I didn't expect them to cut him off like that. I guess it showed me that I wasn't the only one who thought he was in the wrong. Every few days, my grandma would call me to check in. She never brought up my dad, and I appreciated that. She mostly asked how I was doing, how things were at Maggie's, and if I needed anything. I think she was trying to make up for the fact that things had gone so sideways, even though none of it was her fault. It was comforting to know that at least someone in the family had my back. Life at Maggie's was way more relaxed than it had ever been at my dad's house. There was no tension, no walking on eggshells. I actually felt like I could breathe again. I spent my days doing online school, thanks, pandemic, and helping Maggie around the house. It wasn't exciting, but after months of feeling like I was in constant fight or flight mode, it was exactly what I needed. The thing was, though, even with all the support from my aunt and grandparents, I still felt this gnawing emptiness inside. I mean, yeah, I was glad to be out of my dad's house, but I couldn't help but think about my half-brother. I hadn't met him yet, and part of me worried that by staying away from my dad and Laura, I'd never get the chance. He was innocent in all of this, and it didn't feel fair that I might lose out on being his sister because of everything that happened between me and my dad. I tried not to dwell on it, but it was hard. Every time I thought about my future, I wondered if my brother would be in it. But at the same time, I knew that going back to my dad's house, even just to see him, wasn't an option. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face them, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. One night, while I was scrolling through my phone, I saw a notification from my dad's social media. He had posted a long, drawn-out message about family and how he regretted how things had gone with me. It was clearly aimed at me, even though he didn't mention my name. He wrote about how he wanted to make amends and bring the family back together. Reading it made me angry all over again. He was acting like posting online was the same as apologizing to me directly, like putting up a vague, guilt-trippy message was supposed to fix everything. But it wasn't. If he really cared, he would have called my aunt, or written me a letter, or done something other than try to get sympathy from strangers online. I shut my phone off and threw it onto the bed. I wasn't going to let him drag me back into his drama. Not this time. The next morning, I told Maggie about the post. She shook her head and said, "That sounds like your dad. He doesn't know how to just admit he was wrong." And that was it, really. That was the problem. He didn't want to admit he was wrong. He just wanted things to go back to the way they were, like nothing had ever happened. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't going to pretend that everything was fine just to make him feel better. After that, I decided to completely cut him off. I unfollowed him on social media, blocked his number, and asked Maggie not to tell me anything about him unless it was important. I needed space to move on with my life, and as long as he was still trying to drag me back, I wasn't going to be able to do that. It was hard, though. Harder than I thought it would be. Cutting someone off, even when they've hurt you, isn't as simple as just hitting a block button. There were moments when I wanted to reach out, moments when I missed the way things used to be, but then I'd remind myself of that night, of the things he said, and I'd remember why I had to keep my distance. Moving forward without them wasn't easy, but it felt right. It felt like the only option I had left. All right, let's fast forward a couple of years. I had managed to keep my distance from my dad and keep that part of my life separate. It wasn't easy, especially with everything going on with my own health. But I was finally at a point where I felt like I had a handle on things. It wasn't perfect, but I'd carved out a life that worked for me. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from my dad. After years of silence, he suddenly wanted to talk. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, he was reaching out to apologize. Or maybe he had come to his senses and wanted to fix things. But no, this wasn't about making amends. It was about his life falling apart, and me being the only one who could apparently help him pick up the pieces. Turns out his wife, my stepmom, had completely flipped on him. She started accusing him of being violent, aggressive, and even misogynistic, the whole 9 yards. And the kicker? It was all fake. She was pulling the same garbage she had pulled on me years ago, but this time, he was the one on the receiving end of it. I'll admit, when I first read his message, I had this weird sense of déjà vu. I could almost hear her voice in my head, throwing out the same wild accusations, twisting the truth to make herself look like the victim. I'd been there. I knew how it felt to be gaslighted by her. But the difference is, when she did it to me, my dad stood by her and let it happen. He even got physical with me over it, and I was the one who was thrown out of the family. Now he was the one kicked out of the house and he had nowhere to go. I'll be honest, it was hard to feel any sympathy for him. From what I gathered, she had turned everyone in their social circle against him. He was facing some serious legal charges, accusations flying left and right, and no one believed his side of the story. She painted him as this monster, and now he was desperate. But what really got me was the part where he said he tried going to his parents, my grandparents, and they disowned him. My grandparents. These were the same people who had always been in his corner no matter what, and now even they were done with him. Apparently, when he showed up on their doorstep looking for help, they told him he wasn't welcome. They basically told him that after how he treated me, he wasn't part of the family anymore. I guess they had finally reached their breaking point after everything that went down between us. And to be fair, my grandparents had always supported me through this mess, even when things with my parents were at their worst. So hearing that they disowned him didn't really surprise me. What did surprise me, though, was the condition they set for him. They told him that if he wanted any chance of getting back into their lives, he had to fix things with me first. That was their deal. No reconciliation with me, no reconciliation with the family. And that's why he was reaching out. Not because he felt bad for how things went down. Not because he realized what he did was wrong, but because he needed me to fix his mess. When I read that part, I couldn't help but laugh a little. It was so typical of him, really. He hadn't changed at all. He didn't want to apologize or make things right because it was the right thing to do. He just wanted to do whatever he had to do to get back in my grandparents' good graces. It was all about him, like it always had been. I wasn't even mad, to be honest. I was just done. The years of silence, the distance, had given me time to heal. Not completely, of course, but enough to realize that I didn't need him in my life. I had already moved on without him, and now he was trying to weasel his way back in because he had no one else left. So, when he asked if we could talk things through, I didn't hesitate. I told him straight up, no. That was it. No long explanation, no trying to soften the blow. Just a simple, firm no. I wasn't going to be his lifeline. Not after everything he'd done, and certainly not because he suddenly needed me to clean up his mess now that his wife had kicked him to the curb. But of course, he didn't take that well. He sent me a flurry of messages after that, trying to guilt-trip me into helping him. He said things like, "I'm still your father," and "family should stick together in hard times," as if that had ever meant anything to him before. He kept insisting that we could work things out, but I wasn't falling for it. I knew he didn't care about fixing things with me. He just wanted back into the family, and I was the only thing standing in his way. I didn't respond to any of his other messages after that. I blocked him and moved on with my day. It wasn't even that hard, honestly. There was no emotional struggle, no second guessing. I'd made my peace with the situation a long time ago. He wasn't part of my life anymore, and that wasn't going to change just because he suddenly found himself on the other side of things. The truth is, he made his choices. He chose to stand by his wife when she was tearing me apart. He chose to push me away, to side with her lies and manipulation. And now, when he's finally seeing her true colors, he wants me to swoop in and save him? No, I'm not doing that. He can deal with the consequences of his choices just like I had to. And as for my grandparents, I respect their decision to disown him. They saw what he did to me, and they're holding him accountable for it. That's more than I ever expected, honestly. But as far as fixing things between us, that's never going to happen, not after everything. So that's where we are now. My dad's life is in shambles, and he's trying to reach out to me to make things right, but only because it benefits him. And I'm not interested. I'm not going to be his ticket back into the family, and I'm not going to let him back into my life just because he's run out of other options. So yeah, I told him no, and I don't regret it for a second.